Om te dhyan yoga nugata apasyan. Devatma shaktim svagunayar nagudam. Yaha karnani nikilani tani. Kalatma yuktanya adidishtat yekaha. Om shantihi shantihi shantihi. Practicing the yoga of meditation, the ancient seers of India perceived the divine dynamic power of Shakti existing everywhere and in everything, and which, though veiled by her own modes of nature, was nevertheless indivisible, and which had been imperceptible to them earlier due to the limitations of their own intellects. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karava Vahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvisho Vahai. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Salutations to everyone, both present here in our SRV San Francisco ashram and also live streaming. We welcome you all to this class on the Svetashvatara Upanisad, which San Francisco has been studying for a couple of years now, and we're just finally reached the 6th and final chapter of that great scripture. And we're taking it up here in this particular Dharma visit. That is, we want to be Dharma dispensers, and we want to come and deliver the Dharma to your very doorway, the doorway of your mind, or gateway to your heart, as you may want to look at that. Nevertheless, we're doing it around the time of Mother's Day, which has just passed, so that's why I chanted from the very Svetashvatara Upanisad. This Rishi Svetashvatara was a very illumined soul. It was one of the more, of the ancient Upanishads, one of the more recent ones, so talks about the red parrot with green eyes and the old man tottering on his staff and various references like that events in us that knowledge that Brahman is in everything and everywhere, and associating with forms, though not the forms themselves. So it has that Upanishadic wisdom that is very key to our Vedanta path. Vedanta really means Upanishad. Veda, Anta. Veda is the Vedas, the 4 Vedas, which I put this chart up just for us to reference. And the Upanishads, 108 of them, which makes that number extra significant for our tradition, are the end portion of those Vedas, of those 4 Vedas. So those are the Upanishads, the 4th and final portion. So it's not end of the Vedanta, end of the Vedas, it's the end portion of the Vedas, which are the Upanishads. So really when we study Vedanta, we look into these non-dualistic scriptures called Upanishads. There must have been many more than 108, maybe thousands, and we don't fret about those being lost, because nothing is ever lost. In the Sanatana Dharma, it's come eternally existing in the minds of the seers, or it's in Ishvara's mind, the greatest soul. the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, everything comes out of them and goes back into them, so the appearance of coming and going is all apparent or non-actual, when there's just this one abiding reality in and everything, which this chant from the Upanishad just stated. They meditated in ancient India, they saw the Devatma Shaktim. Devatma means the Deva, of the goddess of the Atman, and the Shakti, the power, the dynamic power that comes flowing out, which is at the basis of all these worlds. And they saw that although she's veiled by nature, she's never in nature. She's not caught in nature. She's always transcendent of it, and really is their own consciousness looking on to nature. And even though she's veiled by those things, she's nevertheless one and indivisible, and she was imperceivable or imperceptible to them earlier because of the limitations of their own intellects, and that's why they had to meditate, so that they would open these gateways, nerves. Just like your body has a network of nerves, your mind has a network of nerves. I'm not talking about your brain, we're talking about your mind. That's the kingdoms of heaven within you are in your mind, and you must take your consciousness away from external things, turn them inward, and then have that consciousness course along those nadis, they're called in Sanskrit. Nadis mean subtle nerves. So you have to leave your physical body behind and get into your subtle body. You do it every night in dream, and you do it, you take these channels at death when you leave the body. So these nadis have to be open. So you do certain breathing exercises to open them. You sit in a good posture and master your posture to open them. You know, the 8 limbs of yoga. You do all your practices, and or practice the Kundalini system and open the chakras, however you want to say it. India's replete with so many ways to open these doorways, and then life can really begin. Everything before that hasn't been life at all. It's been mundane life, or worldly life, or confused life, or scattered life. Life and mind are really one the same, because life came out of mind. We'll look at that when we look at the Parastika body, which the Svetashvatara mentions right out the top of the 6th chapter. So anyway, that opening chant I gave you was right out of the Svetashvatara Upanishad. You might have recognized it from earlier chapters. And we've also taken it out and memorized it as one of our 7 meditation chants. The tradition is there's 7 peace chants, right? And so they appear at the beginning and the end of every Upanishad that you look into. If I looked at the Svetashvatara Upanishad, I'd immediately come upon one of the peace chants. Oh, there it is. Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu. We just chanted it, you see. I mean, Brahman, protect us and nourish us and sustain us and so forth. At the end, I'll find another one, you see. So these 7 peace chants are classic representations of true peace, not just happiness or the peace of a good vacation, or a peace of resting in nature happily. The peace that passes all understanding is more like it, or the peace that should accompany the mind when it moves into these inner worlds and takes on its other bodies. Consciously it should be doing this, not with doubt or with reticence or dragging its feet. This is true life, is what I'm saying. It's eternal life, what Christ talked about. The fishermen along the river didn't have it. They had everything else. They had all external life, but they had no inner life. So he had to make them fishers of men. And so he had to open up these rivers, you see, these nadis, these currents, these channels, these lotuses, these chakras. In the heart there's thousands of where all the nerve endings meet, abides the Atman. You see, so you have to open a passageway to that highest reality. So in that way, Svetashvatara, this great rishi, is going on and on about not only that, which the Upanishads focus on, non-dual reality, but all the things you'll meet along the way, see, that you don't see outside in this world. Gods, goddesses, celestials, ancestors, those are all inside of you. And so you have to move in and make your acquaintance with them. You see, neutralize your karma with them, particularly around the ancestors. And it's like Buddha did, so you can see your way through to the source again. We're all involved in this day and age, and particularly in this country, with evolution. And I think we have to go to the zoo to see our relatives or something. But basically we have to go inside to see our real ancestors. You see, our real ancestors aren't monkeys and paramecium and so forth. Those are just forms we assumed along the way on the physical level. But there are at least 5 other levels of consciousness beyond the physical that science doesn't account for, because it simply can't see them with the senses, understand them with the senses. The Mundaka Upanisad says the senses are defective by nature. Why? Because they're outward going only. So you have to open up 5 other kinds of senses inside of you, subtle senses, you see. And those are like dream senses, like you dream tonight and you see, taste, touch, and hear and smell in a dream. And these senses are shut down at that time. You see, the hawk pierces the akashas and rests in its nest inside, is how one of the rishis, Pipalada, puts it. It pierces the sky and rests in its own nest. So it begins to take this inward journey that it does every 24 hours anyway, but now it has to do it in meditation, consciously, and then it will meet these beings, whatever it wants to see. If it wants to see its great-grandmother again, or if it wants to see an angel, or if it wants to have a vision of a god, it will have darshan with these beings in a conscious way, and then doubt will die. See, if you just do it in a dream, it's not enough, because your psychology, Western psychology, and your Western religion, and your Western politics and all that has not cleared the way. They're focusing on the outer only. So that's evolution. Billions of years and then an end. You see, but that's not fair. You see, first, number one, consciousness isn't engaged in that evolution. You're not providing for your own consciousness in that process. You're only providing for nature and its permutations. But when nature reaches the end, then it has to turn and go back to its source. See, and there are certain principles inside called tattvas that you account for: inner senses, inner elements, inner realms, akashas, lokas they're called. Well, we have no words for these in English, so we don't know about them. So take up the Sanskrit language and this chant about the Devatma Shaktim that they meditated on. They found her, and she revealed to them the essence of the scriptures, and then they put it into words finally, after reciting it to their children and not writing it down for the longest time. Then they finally put it into words, and became 108 of them have lived these many thousands of years since that period. So we're taking up one of those Upanishads. We'll take up another one after we get through with that. We've been through several, and we've been through other scriptures of India too. But if you want to take this inner pilgrimage to this most remote and pure refuge place, this distant retreat, you don't have to go necessarily only to the mountains of the Himalayas to do that, but you need to eventually come to this well, as Ramprasad in one of his poems puts it, this confluence of 3 rivers. In other words, there's the Sahasrara, and there's the Ida, and there's the Pingala. See, those are 3 nerve currents, one going up the middle and 2 going around. See, and the Sahasrara is actually at the head of that. So, and Ida, the Pingala, and the Sushumna, and might as well be a spiritual representation of the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Sometimes I say it's like Columbus was the discovery of the outer worlds, but you have to be a sort of inner Columbus and take these 3 ships to this inner confluence of these 3 great rivers where they meet, and there's this spiritual currents are flowing upward and inward, you see. I was just at a funeral, Catholic funeral for some departed loved ones, and all the people there, as well as the priest, was talking about looking down. All these people that departed are now looking down on us, and God is looking down on us from heaven. But Whereas you could allow that symbolically, you'd have to say, to correct it, you have to say they're looking outward from inward. They really only return to you, because you are consciousness and they are consciousness. Ya dakam shude shadama siktam tadrageva bhavati. Evam muner vijanata atma bhavati gautama. You see, so basically, just like pure water is poured into pure water, the selves pour themselves, the seers pour themselves into the ultimate self. See, from the Jivatman to the Paramatman. Jiva is Shiva. It's all one consciousness, you see. But you have to realize this. You can't just lip service it, you see. They teach us to say affirmation is a very good thing, but it must be followed up by intense practice. So people can parrot things, and they can hear these great teachings, and they can say them. I am Brahman, you see, or who am I? They have these great statements that you say, but nobody ever follows it up with practice to validate it inside of themselves. See, and that's called direct spiritual experience. First you hear it from the lips of an illumined preceptor, and you see it in the scriptures, and then you get your own experience around it and validate it. So that's the 3 proofs of truth. That's the 1, 2, 3 punch that puts Maya to the mat for all times, and you're the victor. You see, Jai, 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 you're the victor 3 times. So all of this has to be followed through with practice, and what you're hearing in the Upanishads is the result of practice of lifetimes in these particular souls, like Svetashvatara and other great rishis, and all the way up to the modern day rishis like Ramana Maharshi and Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna and so forth. These are great souls that have come forth with their own spiritual experience and given us testimony, Atmic testimony on yoga. See, it's the name of a book that's coming out, Atmic testimony on yoga. So, in that way, then, these Upanishads, we've talked about it before. If you know a little bit of the language, because you have to talk to each person in their own language, but if they don't have a language of spirituality, then you have to teach them the language of spirituality and then talk to them in it. So you have, it's like going to Spain, having a good time, but you don't know Spanish. But the next time you go 10 years later, you've learned Spanish, and now the whole country opens up to you. It's the same with this inner country of spirituality, that it'll all open up for you when you learn the language, some of the words. And like nadis, nerve currents that flow inward, or Maya, beware of Maya, as they say. There's name, form, time, space, and causality, desha, kala, nimitta, and nama and rupa. These are things that are watchwords in these traditions. And just having a word for a thing designates it. And having had it designated for you, you're aware of it. And then awareness puts to death ignorance around it, and that's knowledge. Vedanta is vidya. It's wisdom, higher wisdom. We'll talk about that with this beautiful chart that's coming up about higher wisdom and lower knowledge. So I want to start off this class officially with, this has been my usual preamble to sort of get your feet wet, or have a little advanced taste of the higher mental atmosphere that we're trying to approach. You see, as we take up an Upanishad, time is nothing. Billions of years are nothing. When you take up a scripture like this, then the rishis are right there with you. They might as well be sitting beside you. Vivekananda, and I was thinking about it at that funeral I attended in that mass last week, so that Vivekananda said, our loved ones have not passed, they've not gone anywhere. They're still right here with us in this very world, only in a different dimension. So there's really one world, but it has different dimensions, and the senses can't perceive certain of those dimensions. In fact, the senses start perceiving scattered mind with a scattered mind, you see, and then they don't see dimensions anymore, they see dementia. So you want to see these inner worlds, right? You have to open them up and look at them. Of course, people will call you demented when you do. The scientists and intellectuals and so forth, God doesn't exist and all that. But it's not a matter of whether God exists or not. The truth is that God is existence. That everything is that. And you are that too. And that's what you're trying to prove here. You're trying to make these connections. They're called vyahritis in Sanskrit. The only word we have in English is connection. We think of maybe, getting into a house with some wiring and connecting something to another thing so your juicer will work, you see. And your appliances and so forth, and your TV will turn on, unfortunately. So basically, you have to make these connections inside too, these vyahritis. And Upanishads, we studied the Taittiriya Upanishad in Portland recently, and that talks about these connections, these essential connections, like your water to taste, you see, and smell to earth, and sight to fire or sun, you see, air to touch, right, and hearing to ether, right. Those are important connections. We just think about these 5 elements and these 5 senses and how they connect. See, that it's called Cosmic Quintuplications. See, that's the newest book I just put out here, and it's also here on our cover. It's our nectar cover. It's the new book, and it's also on this chart about lower and higher wisdom, and these sets of 5s that march back in. If you make those connections, then you have the beginnings of an inner life. Otherwise not. You can preach all the religion and listen to all the teachers all you want, but you don't have an inner life yourself yet because you haven't made these connections. So yoga speaks about that. The father of yoga says you must make these connections. The very most rudimentary ones are just the 5 elements to your 5 senses. If you can connect those 10, then you've got about almost half of the series completed. Now you have to take those into another dimension. You also have 5 elements in a dream, and you have 5 senses in a dream, but you're not accounting for them. You're not designating your consciousness to them. And so it's all about taking stock of principles that are essentially within you. The source is within you. It's a nice way of putting it, because then you don't have to say God or Brahman or Allah or any of the designations that religion uses. You can just say that everyone longs to be at their source. You see, call it peace, call it bliss, call it truth, whatever you like. You don't have to really designate a religion or a denomination to it. In fact, maybe it's better not to in some cases. But you do need to make these connections, essential connections. And so that's what spiritual practice is all about. Sometimes you have to intensify your effort in order to break down blocks in those connections. So it's not just, go to a house and connect this to that. It's like, my wire won't reach, from one place to another, so I can't connect it to the pole, you see. So you have to go about the problem of extending your wire, or removing a kink in your wire, or a break in the wire. So this is what we're up against nowadays, when we've already lost these connections, you see, or they've become corroded and they don't work anymore. See, so now we have to go back and we have to clean them off, and we have to extend them and find the breaks in them. Shamkrishna used to say, one village in India is tapping away at the telegraph, you see, and there's a village about 5 miles away that's not receiving anything. They're waiting for the message, so they have to send a crew out. See, and then the crew finds these monkeys, you see, that have been tampering with the wire, chases them away, reconnect the thing, and then they're tapping away and they're receiving, you see. Well, you're the crew, you see, and the monkeys are all the things that you let into your mind that shouldn't be there. You've heard it, monkey mind, right? In fact, Sri Ramakrishna said, not just the monkey mind, it's the monkey that's gotten drunk with some alcohol it found, and it's gotten into a bee's nest and being stung by bees and running around crazy. That mind, you see, you're going to have to go and settle that mind. And because, as Holy Mother said, Shisharda Devi, you need peace of mind first and foremost. Nothing can be accomplished without collectedness of mind. Collectedness of mind, she says. So scattered mind cannot accomplish anything, not in the world or in the inner world, either one. See, and you're subject to so many pains and sufferings and miseries too. ignominities and vagaries and vicissitudes without end, see, are coming at you. This poor monkey, drunken monkey, being stung by bees. So in that way, again, extended preamble about the downside of not having your life connected or leaving your mind fragmented, and the upside of simply making these connections through the words of the seers and the scriptures. Fortunately for us in the Vedanta tradition, which I would say is just a coverall for yoga, Samkhya, and Buddhism and others, that the non-duality that flows out of India and back into India, from the lowest chakra to the highest, if you want, and back again, that we're very fortunate because these scriptures are unencumbered pretty much by avidhi. It's one of the words we'll encounter today. It means conventional rituals and rites. They really want just to state the truth and let you have at it. See, you have to hear the truth, and then the truth will set you free, Jesus said, right? Thou shalt know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So in our tradition, that's Shravana, you hear it. Manana, you roll it over in your mind. And Nididhyasana, then you get your experience from it. See? Lately I've been calling that savoring the teachings. If, your mind has to encounter the world. Sometimes your mind encounters God. But what happens in between those two, you see? What should happen is not scattered mind and restless mind and so forth, and pleasure-seeking mind. But it should be the mind that savors the teachings. It should always, if it comes down from a higher state, it should just come down to the teachings. Then it can easily go back up. That's like going from here to here, you see, these 4 chakras. But if it comes down to the world, it's going to these 3 lower chakras, the ancestors, the humans, and below them, you see, subhuman species. So basically you want to have your consciousness always at least at the heart, and sometimes can then get to higher samadhi, because it's your natural state, just forgotten it. And then when Sri Ramakrishna used to say, I run a boat race between these chakras, but I never come down to these lower chakras. So you run a boat race, so he never knows when he's going to be in devotional mood, when he's going to be speaking wisdom, when he's going to be having internal visions, and when he's gone. Gatam, paragatam, Buddha said. I've gone beyond to the highest goal. Gatam, there's goals, but paragatam, see, zip the lips, you see. In fact, the tongue even cleaves to the roof of the mouth when that happens. The eyes roll up in the head, and they have these certain 6 spiritual symptoms, they're called, when a person goes into higher samadhi. And so, yes, it'll be beyond the realm of words. But for now, we're engaging in the realm of words, and words have to be very important to us. You see, they have to be held sacred. There are certain mantras that are very banal, you see, and then there are very conventional mantras, like "How's the weather?" is the only thing you can say to your neighbor, you see. You're not leaning over the fence to your neighbor and saying, "How's your Atman today?" You see. "Well, my Atman's good. How's your Atman?" You see. And talking about higher things. You're basically leaning over the fence with a whole mind full of Maya and sharing your Maya with him, and then he's sharing it back with you, and you never get beyond that, you see. So nothing profound ever happens in your life because your mind is always in that low state, see. Heavy, like rainwater falling and seeking the lowest place, Sri Ramakrishna said. That's the worldly mind. But your mind should be more like a hot air balloon, see, always rising. Can't keep it down, right? So why is that? That prana is always down moving, and we got to get it to move up, you see. Or to be more specific, it's always outward going, so we have to get it to move inward. See? And that's inner life. And I've looked around the world and I see precious few people with an inner life. And I see a lot of people talking about inner life, but they don't have one yet. See? If they did, they would be acting different, speaking different. And it would be a matter of transcending mundane human convention and living in a higher state of awareness, which is your right, your divine right to do so. So, again, phase 3 of my preamble, as we get on to this, what I'd like to do with you is just read chapter 6 straight through. I know I have a hard time not commenting on every word and sentence that comes up, because they're so profound and, to me, very inspiring. But I know you'll feel the inspiration in this too. I'm just going to read these set of slokas in chapter 6, which we finally reached in San Francisco. 21 slokas. Let's take about a few minutes. So just use it as a meditation, and you can get an overall feeling of the mindset of the rishis of India. This rishi Svetashvatara, very powerful, and a great grandsire of a whole lineage of other rishis that came after him. They were thinking of families getting enlightenment, you see, and staying enlightened. And those vyahritis, those connections we were just speaking about, were never lost in the first place. It wasn't a matter of going to the zoo to see my ancestors. I was going back into the cosmic worlds to find my ancestors. You see, the sun god was my ancestor. And these are eternal principles, whereas out here in evolution, they're all non-eternal. But nevertheless, from the infinite, the finite has come, you see. But being infinite, only infinite remains, as the Upanishads chant to us. So let me read this chapter 6 and this 21 slokas to you straight off, and then we'll look into them. Some deluded thinkers speak of nature, others of time, as the force that revolves this wheel of Brahman. But really all this is only the glory of the Lord, manifested in the world. It should be known that energy assumes various forms, such as earth, water, light, air, and ether, at the command of He who is the master of the gunas and the maker of time, who is omniscient, who is pure consciousness, and by whom all this is ever enveloped. After setting the creation in motion and withdrawing himself from it, he unites the principle of spirit with the principle of matter, using 1, 2, 3, and 8, through the mere instrumentality of time and their own inherent properties. He gives the start to the creation associated with the 3 gunas of nature, and orders all things. Again, in the absence of the gunas, he destroys all created objects, and after destruction remains aloof in his own essence. By previously meditating as seated in one's own heart on the absolute being who appears as the universe and who is the true source of all creatures, he can be perceived even though he is the primeval cause of the union of spirit and matter, as well as the partless divine entity transcending the 3 divisions of time. Knowing him who is the origin and dissolution of the universe, the source of all virtue, the destroyer of all sins, the master of all good qualities, the immortal, and the abode of the universe, as seated in one's own self, he is perceived as different from and transcending the tree of samsara, as well as time and form. May we realize him, this transcendent and adorable master of the universe, who is the supreme Lord over all other gods, the supreme God above all other lords, and the supreme ruler over all rulers. He has nothing to achieve for himself, nor has he any origin of action, any organ of action. No one is seen equal or superior to him. His great power alone is described in the Vedas to be of various kinds, and his knowledge, strength, and action are described as inherent in him. No one in the world is his master, nor has anyone any control over him. There is no sign by which he can be inferred. He is the cause of all and the ruler of individual souls. He has no parent, nor is there anyone who is his Lord. May this supreme being, who spontaneously covers himself with the products of nature, just as a spider does with the threads drawn from its own navel, grant us absorption in Brahman. God, who is one only, is hidden in all beings. He is all-pervading and is the inner self of all creatures. He presides over all actions, and all beings reside in him. He is the witness. He is pure consciousness, free from the three gunas of nature. Those wise ones who ever feel in their own hearts the presence of that Lord who is the one ruler of the inactive many, and who makes the one seed manifold, to them belongs eternal happiness and to none else. He is the eternal among non-eternals, and the intelligence among all that are intelligent. Though one, he grants the desires of the many. One is released from all fetters on realizing him, the cause of all, who is comprehensible through philosophy and religious discipline. The sun does not shine there, neither the moon nor the stars. There these lightnings shine not. How then can fire shine there? Because he shines, everything shines after him. By his light all this shines. The one destroyer of ignorance in the midst of this universe, he alone is the fire which is stationed in water. Realizing him alone, one overcomes death. There is no other path for emancipation. He is the creator of everything as well as the knower of everything. He is his own source. He is all-knowing. He is the destroyer of time. He is the repository of all good qualities and the master of all sciences. He is the controller of matter and spirit and the lord of the gunas. He is the cause of liberation from the cycles of birth and death and of bondage, which results in its continuance. He is the soul of the universe. He is immortal, and his is rulership. He is all-knowing, all-pervading, protector of the universe, the eternal ruler. None else is there efficient to govern the world eternally. He who at the beginning of creation projected Brahma, the universal consciousness, who delivered the Vedas unto him, who constitutes the supreme bridge of immortality, who is partless, free from actions, tranquil, faultless, taintless, and resembles the fire that has consumed its fuel. Seeking liberation, I go for refuge to that effulgent one, whose light turns the understanding towards the Atman. Only when men shall roll up the sky like a skin will there be an end to misery for them without realizing God. This highest mysticism, expounded in the Vedanta in a former age, should not be taught to one whose passions have not been subdued, and not to one who is not a worthy son or disciple. These truths, when taught, shine forth only in the high-souled one who has supreme devotion to God, and an equal degree of devotion to the spiritual teacher. They shine forth in that high-souled one only. Himself realizing Brahman by the power of self-control and concentration of mind, as well as by the grace of God, the sage, Svetashvatara, expounded well to the highest order of sannyasins the truth of that supremely holy Brahman, resorted to by all the seers. Om, peace, peace, peace. So you just heard the 6th chapter of the Svetashvatara Upanisad, and you could, as you listened, many of you probably heard at least 2 or 3 slokas in it that we've memorized over the last 20 years. There was Natatra Suryabhati Nat Chandra Tarakam was in there, that is there, that light of the sun, nor sky, nor of lightning, nor of fire shines not. A beautiful one. And there was Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam in that chapter. He is the eternal among non-eternal things, the intelligence of the most intelligent ones. And there was Adihi Sa Samyoga Namitta Hetu. That was the most recent meditation chant we all meditated on, which means meditate on the Lord as thine own self, seated in your heart. That's a very beautiful way of putting it. A different translation than the one here, but I prefer it. Meditate upon the Lord as thine own self, seated in your heart. Where was there any difference, any real difference between God and mankind? There never was. We created those differences and believed in them to our own shame and to our own misery, to our own suffering. So we need to make those connections and regain back this knowledge that the soul of mankind is eternal, pure, ever perfect. timeless, deathless, and causeless, ever free and never bound. See? So the message of the Upanishads shines through so beautifully. Now, another facet of this chapter you might have heard is that, and it's a little bit subtle, but sometimes they're talking about the cosmic God, and other times they're talking about the absolute God. So this is called Nirguna and Saguna Brahman. Some slokas are talking about a God of creation. Like he brought the creation to Lord Brahma, brought Lord Brahma into existence, and Vishnu and Shiva as the three trinity, the main God, you see. One's in charge of, they say creation, but I like to say projection, because you can't get something out of nothing, so you're projecting something out of a store of something back inside of you. Can't just, immediately give rise to something that doesn't exist. Everything exists all the time. It's just either in a manifested state or an unmanifested state, like deep sleep tonight. So you have to go into unmanifested state, find the seeds there, water them, and bring them out. So basically, Lord Brahma is the best at doing that. See? Vishnu is the best at seeing what Brahma did and saying, let's keep this for a while. See, we're going to sustain this. And everyone likes Vishnu because of that, you see. Creation is too painful, you see, it's too unsure. And destruction, Shiva, nobody likes that, you see. But we're saying you have to make some sort of relation with Shiva, death and destruction and that kind of thing. But we like to use those words projection, sustenance, and withdrawal, because they carry not only, to save people's egos, because it might be too hard for them to think about destruction or even birth, which is painful. But if you say projection, sustenance, withdrawal, then you know that everything's coming out of Lord Brahma's cosmic mind into the collective mind, down into the individual mind, and then that's a sort of evolution on the cosmic side of things. But then there's an involution also that marches back to the Lord of creation, to Lord Brahma. And Lord Shiva will be there to end the whole cycle and then only to start it again. So billions and billions of souls are getting on that wheel of samsara, right? So he saves you from the wheel of samsara if you realize. So if you realize what? If you realize the Supreme Lord, if you realize Lord Brahma, he might just say, well, why don't you go back again for another round? You see, another merry-go-round ride on the merry-go-round of Maya. Here, have some hot dogs and popcorn first, you see. And then get on this, what'll happen, right? You'll get sick. But if you realize the Supreme Lord that gave the power of Lord Brahma to project things, then you're free from this cycle of samsara. You get off this wheel of birth and death, as the Buddhists would say. The Kala Chakra, Lord Buddha called it, the wheel of time. Kala Chakra. So that's another facet about this chapter. You have to know when they're talking about the qualified Lord and when they're talking about the unqualified consciousness, which is non-dual. One is qualified non-dual, the other is non-dual. Both very high principles, but there's no getting beyond the fact that everything comes from formlessness into form and then merges back into formlessness. From the infinite, the finite comes, but still only infinite remains. So you can never get away from that all-pervasive essence, which you are, is your true nature. So let's look at some of these slokas. I'm only going to choose certain ones to teach, so we could even be finished with this chapter tomorrow. Ha, I know what you're thinking, but we are almost through with this Upanishad, and we'll take up another one, but these slokas are very much impregnated with that power of both formless and formed Nirguna and Saguna Brahman. And I'll try and bring out those distinctions as we go along. So again, I will read you the first two slokas, which I'm not going to comment on too much. Some deluded thinkers speak of nature, others of time, as the force that revolves this wheel of Brahman. But really all this is only the glory of the Lord manifested in the world. So we're trying to assign finite things to an infinite source or essence, you see. So you'll think of God in the way that you're trained, you see. If you're trained as a biologist, you'll think of reality as biological. And if you're trained in religion, you'll think of not of reality as religious, you see. You'll be using those words that are available to you to explain something which is inexplicable, ultimately, is kind of what they're saying here. The other facet of this that's good is that it echoes back to the very first chapter. In fact, wasn't it even the first slokas that they're just repeating here? Students of Brahman discuss, what is the cause? Is it Brahman? Whence are we born? Why do we live? Where is our final rest? Under whose orders are we, who know Brahman, subject to these laws of happiness and misery? And then second sloka of the whole Upanishad. Time, nature, law, chance, matter, energy, intelligence, none of these, nor a combination of these, can bear examination because of their birth, identity, and existence. So they're pretty much echoing the same thing here, as if to bring this back. And later on they talk about the Wheel of Brahman, and probably took me the longest time of all 250 of these charts I've created to date. The Wheel of Brahma took me the longest to put together. I had to think the longest, I had to work the longest on it. I wasn't going to show it here again because it would take up the whole class. But you remember probably back when we were studying this first chapter several years ago, I took out that chart called the Wheel of Brahman, and we looked at it. And very revealing in that regard. Okay, sloka 2. It should be known that energy assumes various forms such as earth, water, light, air, and ether. At the command of He who is the master of the gunas, the maker of time, who is omniscient, who is pure consciousness itself, and by whom all this is ever enveloped. Third sloka. After setting the creation in motion and withdrawing himself from it, he unites the principle of spirit with the principle of matter, with 1, 2, 3, and 8, through the mere instrumentality of time and their own inherent properties. So the properties inherent in the creation, in the facets of nature, he'll set those in motion and then they'll manifest themselves. They're like seeds. See, Ramakrishna said, a seed falls on a roof of a house and it rolls down into the gutter and the water takes it down to the cornice, the very corner, you see, of the spout there. And it doesn't fall to the ground, so it doesn't germinate. So it's held in the spout there for generations of people who live in that house. So one generation goes, the children are born, the children take up the house, the children die, their children take up the house. For generations this is going on, and that seed stays up there in the cornice of that spout, you see. Finally, the mansion gets dilapidated because of time, see, and the corner falls, and the house falls, the roof falls, and that seed, is knocked out and hits ground, and then water and sunlight come, and it has its time to germinate, you see. So that's a good example of this process of time, and everything has its right time to germinate. It has its own inherent propensity. Everything comes from a seed. Who can tell me in this room what is the seed of all seeds? Om, she said. You see. The bijam, it's called a bijam, and a bijam is the Sanskrit word for seed. So Om is the bijam of all bijams. And out of that will come all other seeds. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God, was Christ's way of trying to explain to John the importance of that seed. So it's very well taken apart and explained. And, it's a triputi. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. But the way Vedanta views that is a triputi. It just doesn't say, there's a word out there somewhere, and leave it alone. But there was in the beginning was the Word. Now, if you understand that much of what Jesus said, you're probably apt to turn your religion into a religion of origins. But there is no origin to Brahman. See, it's endless. There's no origin to the universe ultimately either. It's endless. It just appears to come and go, like your deep sleep and dream and waking, and your lifetime comes and goes. So everybody's caught in this illusion of coming and going. Vivekananda said, coming and going? That's all mere nonsense. Where's the time when the soul will come, when all of time is in the soul? And where's the space to which the soul will come and go when all of space is in the soul? You see? We've all got it backwards. There's no God in the world is in God. So, and that world is inside of you. Adihe sa samyoga namitta hetu. You have to have that, meditate on that knowledge of meditating on the Lord as thine own self. Remove the distinction between you and this and that, you see. Aham and idam, or however you want to put that. And realize your identity with Brahman, like pure water poured into pure water. And, you wouldn't want to pour impure water into pure water in a ritual. Gods might not be too happy to receive that, you see. So you're going to want to purify that vessel of water before you pour it into Brahman. See, it's sort of another way of saying, be careful what you ask for, isn't it? You want to go to God and pray for things with an impure mind. But if you get a pure mind, then you won't have anything to pray for, you see. So that's the conundrum of prayer. But meditation is another level of consciousness, you see. You don't pray to God in heaven. You pray to your own self as that Lord seated in your heart. And that fulfills you right there. Because you're connected to all the principles that are eternal. And then you won't go seeking non-eternal things. It's been said in very nice ways in all these traditions. But particularly in Vedanta and Upanishads, it's just pretty much straight to the source. So, you're probably wondering, he unites the principle of spirit with the principle of matter with 1, 2, 3, and 8. Oh, what the hell are you saying there, Mr. Rishi? You see, said the man from Texas. Explain that to me, you see. So 1 is ignorance. How does spirit get united with matter? Through ignorance. Vedanta is the only tradition that will tell you that. Otherwise, creation is beautiful and it came from God. But creation is not beautiful. It's quite ugly. And you don't want to get on that wheel of creation. Not without discrimination. See? Not without wisdom of what's happening. People are pulled into birth, life, and death in a wheel without knowing what's happening to them. Lifetime after lifetime. And they're just immature little children going from birth to death and having their pleasures which are insipid in the end, and their sufferings which are onerous in the end, and along the way, trying to seek pleasure and shun pain. And it won't work because the two are a duality. They go together. So you can't have one without the other. And in heaven, it just gets a little less pain and a little more pleasure. So heaven is no solution. You don't want salvation, you want liberation. And it would be nice never to have had to seek liberation in the first place, right? I am that. Means the seer who, whether he's in the body or not, knows that all of this is nonsense. Coming and going is all nonsense. Passage of time is all nonsense. Come to tomorrow's class, and I hope to have a chart there for you called the 6 secrets of yogic, of time in yoga. 6 esoteric secrets, it's called. Probably way over most of our heads. But I think I can explain it to you the way that Father of Yoga wanted to sort of give you an intimation of these doorways, these secret doorways that we were just talking about, that you have to connect to. Just going to take a shift of your consciousness, an opening of your consciousness. It doesn't have to take a lot of intense knowledge, or practice will help and qualification will help. But we'll look at that tomorrow if I have that for you, if we get to that sloka. So, 1, it connects matter with spirit through 1. Because how can spirit ever be matter? It's impossible for spirit to become matter. Yet here it is all around. It's matter everywhere, and there's some consciousness in it. First thing we'd probably say is there's intelligence in it. We hope. So if there's some intelligence in mankind, in other words, because it's not there in animals, and it's not there in insects, and it's not there in plants. You've got instinct there. You've got attachment to nature there. But in mankind, you're starting to see the inkling of intelligence. That's why there are these 4 wounds that Mother gives us. First is a human birth. They're very keen on that. A human birth. Man wanted to experience life on earth, so he said to God, this is right out of the Upanishads, give me a body. So he gave him a horse's body. So man's consciousness went down and got into the horse's body and ran around and ate grass all day, you see, and defecated and fertilized and things, you see. And then it said to God, this is not good. I need a better body. So he gave him a cow's body. And this went on, you see. Finally, God gave him a man's body. That means a woman's body too. So it gave him a human body. And man loved that. You see, the conscious said, well, here I can eat, drink, and be merry. You see, this is great. And so they said, oh Lord, this is well done. So to this day, in our tradition, human condition is well done. You see, that is, the body is perfect for our purposes. Now, what are our purposes is the question. Or have we lost our ultimate purpose in the pursuit of these other goals, you see, that are bringing us polluted environment, that are bringing us warring against nations, and a whole list of other problematic things, you see, that are causing karma and causing rebirth. So that's why I say, ignites matter with spirit through 1, through 2, through 3, and through 8. So to the 1, it's matter only gets united with spirit through ignorance, because matter is different than spirit. It's my nice little thing around here with oil and water, you see. Oil and water don't mix. We do that for the children. Put them in a vial, cap it off, color the oil, and then shake it, you see. The 2 are separated. There's green oil here and water. I think water's at the top, right? It floats. So that's matter and spirit. You see, now shake it. And they mix, and the kids say, matter and spirit, what a nice mixture. Yeah, for about 48 seconds, or 48 lifetimes, I used to say. You see. But in one particular lifetime, you'll see the separation of matter and spirit. You will be the witness, and nature will be seen as different from you. That's called kaivalya in yoga. Kaivalya means to separate yourself from nature. Not going to be a real popular thing for people of the world. I mean, I told you I was just at a funeral, and I was at a wake, and then I was at a mass, and then I was at a burial. And the bodies were on display the whole time, see, in their coffins. And there was so much deference, and so much attention, and so many tears, and so much truck with the body. It was all about the body, till we finally put them in the ground and buried them, you see. Then you could walk away. But it's all body-oriented, is my point, see. And you think that's not true, that ignorance is the cause of creation? And you go to something like that, and you're still going to tell me it's not true? That people are ignorant about their true spiritual nature, and they're not attached to the body? From cradle to the grave, my teacher used to say, people are attached to the body. And they think they are the body. And they build that samskara in their mind that I am the body. And that's why you see children born, materialists, civilizations born, and so forth, is because this spirit has gotten united with matter, so to speak, you see. So that's through avidya, ignorance. The realized soul will not come into the body. And if it does come into the body, you realize that he never came and he's not going. And that he never is the body, you see. Keeps his spiritual essence pure and perfect as it is. And doesn't let the mind gravitate from that ideal at all. Swami Vivekananda used to say there's 2 tendencies to the human being. One is to raise itself to God. The other is to pull God down to the world. Unfortunately, most people do the latter. They try and pull God down to the world. That's like trying to mix oil and water. It won't work. It'll work for a little while. And what's that called? Maya. You see? It'll work for a little while. It is 48 seconds or 48 lifetimes. You'll think matter and spirit are completely having a great relationship, you see. But a great relationship, what is that? That's the uniting of Shiva and Shakti. It's a divine thing, you see. That divinity can even visit this realm of duality. But when it gets into multiplicity and diversion and distraction and scattered mind, you can't find divinity there anymore. It's retreated, you see. It won't go there. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, if a woman sees a spider crawl into her slipper, she'll not put it on. Even after her husband goes there and says, there's no spider in here anymore, she won't put it on, you see. So that's like God trying to get into a form, you see. Does not want to put that form on because it's got too many impurities in it. So you have to purify it, and then God will get into you. See, it's just, rule of thumb. In spiritual life, God will not come to the soul with ignorance. So if, at the very get-go, if spirit was united with matter, and that was called avidya, ignorance, and that's how the whole thing gets kicked off. You want to get beyond that sense of ignorance, see, and realize the truth. What about through two? Through two, of course, that's going to be duality. Dharma and adharma, the good and evil effects of actions from past lives, the commentator says here. That's Swami Chagishananda using his version. So through 1, through 2, and through 3, what would 3 be? Your 3 bodies. You have a gross body, you have a subtle body, and you have a causal body. In other words, you have a waking body, you have a dream body, and you have a deep sleep body. These first 2 are form, with form. One's gross form, one's subtle form. The third is formless. It's a doorway into Brahman, deep sleep. You are so close to Brahman every night. That's why deep sleep refreshes you, because you're close to your source, you see. But dreaming for 8 hours turns you into a nervous wreck, because you haven't left form and got your repose that you need every cycle. Every 24-hour cycle, every 12-year cycle, every 100-year cycle when you abandon the body and take on a new one, and so forth. Every cycle you need that repose of formlessness to rejuvenate you. And people who don't get it are just nervous wrecks. Gaudapada used that phrase back in 600 AD. Nervous wreck. It's right there in the scriptures, in Gaudapada's commentary on the Mandukya Upanisad. So you understand now, 1, 2, and 3. This is the 3rd sloka of the 6th chapter of the Svetashvatara Upanishad, and they're saying here, he unites the principle of spirit with the principle of matter. So through 1, through 2, and through 3. You understand those, right? Now how about when it says through 8? Well, that's why I put up the Purastika body. Commentator says here, the eightfold aspect of nature, as described in the Gita by Sri Krishna, vis-a-vis the 5 elements, mind, intellect, and egotism. So there it is. Sri Krishna in the Gita and the rishis of the Upanishads might as well be the same beings, you see. And this is called the Purastika body. 8-fold means, Ashtaka is 8. Because you have Ashtaka yoga, that's the 8-limbed yoga, Ashtanga, and you have the 8-fold Ashtanga Marga, the 8-fold path of the Buddha, you see, and so forth. So that's a common Sanskrit word, and in this case it's applying Vedantically to this body. In fact, this is a teaching by Lord Vashishta, who is one of the 10 mind-born sons of Lord Brahma. So he must know what he's talking about. Yeah, careful. It's on now. So you have to be careful what you're talking about with, in terms of being so close, you see, to the Lord of creation. Brahma and Vashishta, his mind-born son. See, they think and their children are born in that realm. It's not like through the sperm and the ovum and physical bodies and all that. The mind-born children are born from pure thoughts in another realm. See, if they take a body down here, then they'll be great souls like Shankara and Vashishta and Svetashvatara and so forth. They won't forget themselves even amidst Maya. So let's look at the Purastika body. from Lord Vashishta, that is from Yoga Vashishta, that great scripture. The appearance of the Prajastika body from the story of Arjuna. So Arjuna is asking, I think, Lord Shiva in this particular story about the eightfold body, and he says, yes, it's my eightfold body is an eternal principle. See, I mean, sometimes you talk about it as 24 cosmic principles, and other times you talk about it as the 5 sheaths, right? But in that old time, they're talking about it as an eightfold body. So my mind in its threefold aspect, not fourfold yet, because they added chitta later to make it a fourfold mind. Mind in its threefold aspect, plus 5 elements. See, and might as well, include all of this. Deha is part of the body. So if you follow that down with me, there is only and nothing but Brahman. All of this is relative. This is the only reality. There's nothing but that. So all of this is a play, or it's a sport, or it's a manifestation of ignorance, cosmic ignorance, see, or it's a reflection, or it's an expression, or it's an outright illusion. Pick any of those ones, and you'll be picking different schools of India. You see, some of them say, Leela, it's a sport. And then other people come back and say, why would God want a sport? He's complete in himself. Gaudapada, right? God doesn't sport, doesn't want to get into a human form and suffer and enjoy. He's complete inside of itself. It doesn't need to sport. So you've got these protagonists and antagonists in each of these ways of thinking. And then you get down to the last word I mentioned, illusion, right? So you have these Mayavadins, these people who say the world is an outright illusion, see, and kind of rather stark and unkind way of saying it. Because other thinkers will then come along and say, well, it's an illusion as long as you don't know Brahman, but as soon as you know Brahman, then it's Brahman. That very illusion becomes reality to you. You could go to the Zen Buddhists for that kind of teaching. It's every man's consciousness, they say. It remains unrealized, then it's just, banal. But as soon as it gets realized, it's enlightened. But it's the same consciousness that's in the banal, you see. Because consciousness can never be besmirched, you see. It's pure and perfect all the time. And it's residing in the brute, and it's also residing in the seer, you see. Same consciousness. Samadarshitvam is the word in Sanskrit. The sameness in all. See, Vivekananda said, I don't believe in humility and pride. I believe in the sameness in all beings. So it was one of his favorite Sanskrit words. So it's sort of like saying in this tradition in the West, you see, God looks upon saint and sinner alike, right? It would be that kind of statement. He loves the sinner as much as he loves the saint. In fact, he likes the sinner because, as India knows, if you can turn the sinner into a saint, that's a real statement. But you don't even have to, what good is it to turn a saint into a saint? He's already a saint, right? Nothing to accomplish, right? So beings like Narada and Prahlada, there were examples of beings in India who were raised up from this. One was a thief and so forth, and met a saint on the road, and the saint freed him from that, you see. For the grace of God, he got freed. Prahlada was an asura. He was born of the demons, but he became a sura, a god, through his love for Vishnu. Beautiful stories that would throw Sri Ramakrishna into samadhi if you mentioned them. If you said the word Prahlada in Sri Ramakrishna's presence, he was gone, you see, into samadhi. You couldn't get him out for hours. It was gone. It's so suggestive. Talk about the suggestiveness of a child. This is not a childish person. This is a childlike person. And that's different, you see. So he was so pure and perfect and innocent in his own way. Not naive, but innocent. See, that when you mentioned anything of a high nature to him, he would go right into it. See, that's why he realized the same essence in every religion. It only took him a few days to do so. Nobody's ever done that. It's a first. Many people talked about it, but nobody proved the universality of all religions through their own experience in a few days. had a vision of Jesus, had a vision of Muhammad, had a vision of Moses, had a vision of Krishna, of course, and of course Kali. That's going to take some doing to have a vision of her. Most people don't want a vision of her. I once asked an artist to paint Kali for one of my CD covers. He said, no, if I paint Kali, my life will go change too radically. I'm not ready for that. I'll paint Vishnu. So we kind of had a compromise. I said, well, can you paint Durga? He said, well, that's going to be hard too, but yes, I'll paint Durga for you. But Kali, no way. So people know about the power in these deities, what they represent, and not all people, but some people are finding out. So 1, 2, 3, and 8. So 8, you see the body there. There's nothing but Brahman. Then there's this Atmic Sankalpa. There's, of course, Mayic Sankalpa, and Vashishta explains that. That's not a route you want to go, projecting things out of ignorance. But if you see everything as a projection from Lord Brahma, which Vashishta would do because Lord Brahma is his father, then what comes is a very pure body that Kundalini loves to sport through, he says. See, if you have a pure body, Mother likes to get into it and sport there. So you could respond to Gaudapada, well, maybe Brahman doesn't like to sport, but Mother does. You see? And he would have to agree because he was actually a Kulachara Vedantist. He was a follower of Samayachara, they call it. He was a follower of Shiva and Divine Mother. At the same time, he was a non-dualist. Very interesting combination. That's why Gaudapada, Govindapada, and Shankara transformed India at that age, after the Buddhist decline. They brought back all of India and the non-dualism. They're credited with that. Very powerful tradition, those three. And Govindapada's last incarnation had been the father of yoga in 140 AD, Patanjali. So you've got yoga, Vedanta, and non-dualism, and Tantra all in that line right there. It wasn't that my path is the only way, sort of like Vishnu is the only way, but you've got Mother, you've got, on top of Divine Mother, you've got Shiva, and you've got non-duality. All is my path, you see. So there's room for grounds for acknowledging a divine sport, you see. It's something you could say to the non-dualist if they were a narrow non-dualist, if there is such a thing. So Atmic Sankalpa, then the Jivatman comes. Here's the dreamer. It's an interesting way of putting it. If you have access to materials and you're not in the non-material realm anymore, your consciousness has come down from Brahman, you have access to materials. It's like seeds again, like Om and other bijams. And you know how to use them, then you can dream away, you see. Row, row, row your boat, right? Life is but a dream, but they know it's a dream, see, so they can get into it and then they can give it up. They don't get attached to it and, cling to life and fear death. Life and death don't exist for them. There's only eternal life. So this is a very high level of Atmic propensity, you see, all that's there. And what comes out of it is this body that the Lord gives, or that the Divine Mother gives. You need a human birth first, right? So to sport properly, you're not going to want to be a horse or a cow or a whale or a dolphin. Sorry, all of you who are enamored with them. You're going to need a human form, you see. And what's that consist of? First and foremost, ego. We said the creation is built out of ignorance. That's the first thing, right? So an ego is about as ignorant as you can get. Ego thinks, I am separate from God. And it has to think that in order to exist. It's not its fault. See? Sri Ramakrishna called the ego like an onion, right? All peelings with no center. And it makes you cry when you peel it. See? So the ego is that rascal. But if you can ripen the ego, he said, then you've got a lover of God. Then you've got a divine sporter. Not someone who's weeping and wailing on your shoulder about all their problems and the ego and all its its various troubles, you see, but it's got a person who's happy in the world, not just happy, even blissful, peaceful, actually going into samadhi like Sri Ramakrishna was. I can eat and drink and be merry here. I'm fine in the body. As long as he's in the body, he's in knowledge of God, then there's no danger for that soul, you see. That's pure sport. That's lila. So, ahamkara, what's the beautiful explanation here? It comes into being by belief in its own separate existence. That's the secret of the ego, really. It believes in its own separate existence. And like I said, it really has to. Because when seers see through the ego, they don't have a separate existence anymore. They're one with Brahman. And they always were one with Brahman. And they will never not be one with Brahman. So the ego has no place there, you see. Ripe or otherwise. This very man, Lord Vashishta, talked about the 3 stages of the ego. Dehatmahamkara means, deha means bodies. So it's the ego that thinks it's a body. That's coming, right? And then there's sakshahamkara. Sakshahamkara, the ego that is the witness of all these things. But then there's paramahamkara. That's Brahman. There's no ego there. See, it's given up its belief in separate self. But in the meantime, it's going to have one. So you probably don't get ego explained as well as this, but in our tradition, and Lord Vashishta being one of the best to do that. In a very simple way. I mean, that's about as simple as I can put it. Now you have manas, you see. Mind comes into being. You have to form an 8-fold body, right? So here's mind, manas, through dual contemplation of itself. So mind is going to have to leave the realm of non-duality. Manas is dual by nature, and it's got everything in it. It's got good and bad, it's got pleasure and pain, it's got life and death, it's got virtue and vice. See, these polar opposites. These contrasting pairs of opposites that Krishna tells Arjuna, you must get over them. These dualities, you have to get over them. Because Arjuna is trying to make his way out of the battlefield of the world, Kurukshetra, and he wants to get into a higher state of mind. So he says, you're going to have to give up these dualities like virtue and vice, and birth and death. Go kill your enemy across there and dispatch him. Do your best to do that. Do it without any anger. Destroy your enemies and reach the highest state of consciousness, but know that it's all just a divine play, that nothing matters. Kind of where we might part company with an ideology that says you have to seek for the meaning in life. There is no meaning in life. Nothing means anything. See, there's only meaning in eternal life, and that's everything. You get everything in eternal life. You get everything when you understand your source, your essence. And then this sport will be okay. You see, it won't be dangerous or risky, as long as you never lose your discrimination in it, you see, and become scattered and take the ego to be real, its separateness to be real, and take the mind and its dualities to be actual. See, you must remain, you can have an ego and a mind, but you must remain separate from them. Back here you're saying, I'm not the body, and that's probably the first teaching you ever heard when somebody mentioned the word Hinduism to you. Oh, they're the religion that teaches you're not the body. See, not that that's such a small thing, but it's much harder to realize you're not the mind and the ego. That only happens in meditation. Because the mind has so much in it that it can just distract you. Look at our scientists, look at our intellectuals, completely taken up with the mind, just like animalistic people are taken up with the body. So there's a lot of subtler forms of Maya that come along to allure you, you see, and take you away from this precious, rare, non-dual wisdom that's the most immaculate and superlative bit of truth that you'll ever possess, and it's the hardest to hang on to at the same time. You may see it one day. Yes, I and my Father are one kind of realization, you see. I am Atma Brahma. And the next day you wake up and say, what was that again? I remember the words, but I don't remember the actual realization that I had that accompanied the word, you see. It's so enigmatic like that. And Maya is at work there, you see, causing you all of these tattvas, principles that mentioned here, 1, 2, 3, and 8, are at work. Maya is operative, you see, and you are in it. But if you're in Brahman, you're never in Maya, you see. Vivekananda said that. You're never in Maya. Maya's in you. So get rid of it. Just prefer to live in Brahman all the time. To prefer to be yourself. You see, your true self. Know the truth and be set free, and that's it. That's game over. You see. So you might say when the great souls come into bodies like this, they're doing it for your sake. I mean, that's a principle in Christendom. See, with Christ sacrificing you his blood for your sake and so forth. But it also applies to every other Christ-like being that's ever come to earth. Why would they come to sport if their desires are over? See, I mean, that was one of these slokas. It has no desire, has nothing left to gain. Well, those are seers, see. So they're coming into the body for some other reasons than most people are. To pursue pleasures, or to get fame, or to have money, or experience riches, power over others. Those are occult powers. It's called the Ashtabala cities, 8 occult powers. People come in for those. But these other seers are coming in with no intention or motive or desire whatsoever. And so you should know that about these, that they're going to take on a body like everyone else, but they know, these little few word mantras that I've put beside here are the best way that I could slim it down from Yoga Vasishtha scripture to describe each of these principles. After manas is buddhi, the intellect, it says here, it comes into being via certitude of its own intelligence. So I have a chart that I'll present to you probably in a few months called the dynamics of perception. And it's Vedanta's way of explaining how these very things color the buddhi. And when the buddhi gets colored by what the thoughts and the ego are sending it, then it gets diluted. Sometimes just slightly. Sort of like being out of focus a little bit. The movie is out of focus. You can't enjoy it. So most people's intellect is like that. It's skewed. Or it's got some certain little impurities in it. And so they're not seeing rightly. Buddha called that right orientation. And the opposite of that, Father of Yoga called it Bhranti Darshana, false seeing, diluted seeing. So if the intellect's just a little out of whack, and it doesn't have to be sinful out of whack, and it doesn't have to be immoral out of whack, it can just be intellectually out of whack, philosophically out of whack, you see. And then it won't see the truth. It's just like this. You don't see me anymore. As Ramakrishna used to say that. Now you see me, now you see me, now you don't, you see. It's that simple. And the intellect is that important of a thing, particularly in Buddhism, because Buddha named himself after it, Buddhi, Buddha, and in Vedanta, where knowledge is the first compound out of Brahman. First thing that comes out of Brahman is intellect. Not love, because the universe isn't made out of love, it's made out of ignorance. This is something we got to get clear, you see. Love is up here. Yeah, love is the highest thing. But if you come down to this level, you're going to need a bright, shiny intellect, you see, that's focused. That's this chakra as compared to this chakra, isn't it? This is bliss and love, and this is razor-sharp wisdom. So, give up your argument whether wisdom or love is the greater path. This is the greater path as long as you're in form. And if you're beyond form, it doesn't matter what's the greater path, you see. But as long as you've come here or lower, the intellect's it. It's the king of everything. It's the first compound out of Brahman. That's how Vivekananda puts it. The first substance out of Brahman. Brahman has no substances, just pure conscious awareness. First thing that'll appear will be intelligence, you see. So it needs to be focused, like this third eye. If thine eye be single, you shall know the truth. But if it becomes dual, you've got problems. Your consciousness is split first in two, then it becomes fragmented, then it becomes scattered, you see. and then life is a nightmare. An ongoing series of bad dreams of 100 years in duration, each one. See? So, via certitude of its own intelligence, the Buddhi has that. It knows it's the first compound out of Brahman. It knows Brahman like that, you see, like one. But it can get skewed if it's getting a wrong reading from these other mechanisms that are a part of the mind. So there's your threefold mind, basically. Now, here's the five senses. I put them in there in awareness of the five elements, we hope, because that's what I just said, right? The vyahritis, the connections, are that you put earth together with taste, with smell, and water together with taste, and fire together with seeing. Those are connections. But if you're coming this way, you put it in that way, you see. It's in awareness of the five elements. So before the elements come along to form the body, the senses were there. And before the senses were there, the mind was there. And before the mind was there, Brahman, anterior to life and mind. See, it's right out of the Mundaka Upanisad. So this is all evolution at a cosmic level, and here's where evolution takes place on a physical level. I have a chart that's almost ready on that. It's called Cosmic Involution and Scientific Evolution, and it shows how one is happening only on a physical level, and people who don't know about cosmic involution can't account for there being a source of consciousness, an origin of things. Like even the word is not known in science. It's the word that's the origin of all things. Which is why I was saying earlier, you don't want to base your religion on that. Christ didn't want Christianity to believe in origins. He knew that Brahman, the Almighty Father, was beyond origins. That's why he said it was with God, and then it was God. See, he didn't just say in the beginning was the Word and left it at that for John to think that there was an origin to things. That's a mistake, philosophical mistake. So in the beginning was the Word, then it was with God. There was two, God and His Word, and then it was God. See, so he's ending up that Triputi with the declaration that the Word and God are one, that there is just oneness. And without knowing that kind of explanation to Christ's cryptic saying, and you see it in the Bible later via John's interpretation, then you realize how Christianity fell into this idea of creation, creationism. You see, 7 days and eternal sin and other things that are untenable came along to replace Christ's original intention, which was, I and my Father are one, and be thee perfect as thy Father in heaven. It's not just I am perfect, you also are perfect in your very nature. Call it Allah, call it Brahman, call it Almighty Father, call it all of those things, or call it nothing at all, but realize it. That's the end of the first half of this class. We'll take up this final part of this chart when we come back. So we've made 3 slokas headway. So let's take 15 minutes. Live streaming audience can look at this while we're away, and we can gain some refreshment here. Thank you for your kind attention.